This is a Flipping Junkie podcast, episode 41. Welcome to the Flipping Junkie podcast. My name is Danny Johnson, former software developer turned house flipper, flipping hundreds of houses. Each week, we bring you interviews, strategies, stories, and motivation to help you get started flipping houses and on your way to becoming your own boss and achieving financial freedom. Thanks for spending time with me today. Now let's get to it. Everybody, welcome to the Flipping Junkie podcast. Today we're going to be talking about direct mail marketing for real estate investors. And if you've been doing any flipping or marketing for motivated sellers, or really even just been studying real estate investing, you know that a lot of the big real estate investors around in your area and all across the country in different places use direct mail to get a lot of leads. It's one of the main sources of leads for a lot of investors. So we're going to talk about that with an expert in the field of direct mail marketing, Joe McCall. He's been investing since 2006, has an excellent podcast I really enjoy and get a lot of info out of it's called Real Estate Investing Mastery Podcast. He does that with Alex Jungblood, and he's doing deals in multiple markets across the U.S. while traveling for months at a time in his RV and in Europe. And, he's been teaching and coaching investing since 2011. So I'm really excited to have Joe on the podcast today. We're going to get a lot of great info, and let's just get right into it. Hey, Joe, you there?
Yeah, hey, Danny.
Hey, thanks for being on the Flipping Junkie podcast.
Glad to be here, man.
Yeah, I really love your podcast, and can't wait to see what all the information you're able to share with us about direct mail marketing for real estate investors. And I wanted to start out just by finding out a little bit more about you, and so the audience can find out a little bit more about you, about what got you interested in real estate investing and how you got your start.
Yeah, so I got my start back in 2006. Of course, I read the book that nobody's ever heard of before, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
And what is it?
Got excited about real estate. I actually had a friend at the time in Kansas City who was doing a ton of deals. And, well, not a lot, but I mean, for me at the beginning, as a beginner, he was doing a ton of deals. He had maybe a couple duplexes, and he was taking some classes from a well-known guru, and he was showing me his training materials, the notebooks that he was getting from this group, and I was really impressed. I was excited about real estate, and I remember bugging him, just asking him to teach me everything he knew, and he was busy, and he said, I can't teach you, and recommended these books. I actually heard of a friend who was building and selling duplexes down in Austin, Texas. I flew down there to look at what he was doing, and he recommended, it's so strange how these things happen, he recommended a book to me called Secrets of a Millionaire Landlord. And that completely changed my life, that simple book. And it's kind of weird. I mean, it's not even that great of a book. It is a good book, but it's earth-shattering. I don't actually even recommend the book to many people. But he just had a real simple way. The guy who wrote it was named Robert Sheeman, and he was a guru at the time. He still is, I think, but he was teaching more creative real estate. And so I kind of hooked on to him and the things he was teaching, signed up for his coaching. This was in 2006. In fact, the other day I was looking at my notebook, and I keep notes, at least I used to before my iPad and iPhones, but I used to keep notes on notebooks with pen and paper. Remember those things?
Yeah.
And so I was seeing notes in there from my coaching days, and just funny, I mean, all of the things that they were teaching me to do that are just basic, fundamental, so important. But I didn't listen to anything they said, and I didn't do anything they said to do, and I didn't have any success. I failed miserably, and I blamed them. It was horrible. Looking back at, I was such an idiot because I don't know why I blamed them, but I was mad because I spent so much money on coaching, and for some reason it just didn't work for me, and I really struggled. But I knew I wanted to I wanted to do real estate investing. I wanted to work for myself. And I thought at the time that the key to freedom was just buying a bunch of houses and owning, 100 rental properties that cash flow $100 or $200 a month was the key to financial freedom. Because at the time, market values, house values always go up. They never go down. And I thought for sure it was a safe bet, to count on appreciation.
2006, right?
Yeah. It's not that this is what my gurus were teaching me. This was just what I was coming to my own conclusion, that real estate always goes up. It's the safest bet in the world. And so I started buying a lot of houses with mortgages. And I kind of ignored the coaching that this training company was giving me of buying houses with no money, no credit. I didn't believe them that you could actually do that. But anyway, I bought a bunch of houses. I think I had maybe 15 or 16 single-family homes because that's when it was so easy to buy anything if you just fogged a mirror. And I started also buying houses subject to their existing mortgages. And I bought a bunch of courses. I was a course junkie. I had tons of books, tons of courses, went to all the workshops and the seminars, and really struggled for a long time because I had a serious cash flow problem. Even when the market was good and strong, $100 a month doesn't cut it because you just have 1 month of vacancy, and all of a sudden, I was equity rich, but I was cash poor on these houses, and I was always struggling to pay the bills because I had so much debt in these houses, and it was very frustrating. Well, I had a big cash flow problem. I realized you can't eat equities because the equity that I had doesn't pay the bills again. So then the market crashed. So it went like from bad to worse. The market crashed, and any equity that I had disappeared. And I had a serious cash flow problem at that point. Anyway, to make a short story long, I started learning wholesaling, and I started buying all the courses I could on wholesaling and started wholesaling deals and started doing a lot of direct mail like what we're going to be talking about today. And I realized early on the importance of direct mail because without it, I don't think you can have a serious wholesaling business. Sure, if you have people bring you deals, then you can buy properties. But if you want to work directly with sellers without a middleman and you want to do direct to seller marketing, you cannot ignore direct mail. So I started doing a lot of it. And I just did what the gurus said to do. I didn't know who else to believe. I had two coaches at the time. One of them said to go just make a ton of offers on the MLS. And I didn't like working with realtors. So the other guy said send a bunch of postcards. And that's what I did. I started gravitating towards postcards, sending a lot of them. And once I started consistently, regularly sending postcards, like not just once or twice or just I'll try it out, see if it works. I consistently committed to send postcards every single week. And I just started getting leads. I started getting a lot of leads, and I started doing deals. And I remember my first deal. Am I talking too much, Danny?
No, keep going. I just wanted to say, for people that might have heard that statement before, how much wisdom there is in it as far as like the whole consistency thing, because that's the key. I think when people are saying, well, it hasn't worked, I tried, and you ask them, well, how many postcards did you send? Well, I sent 200. How many times did you send them? Once.
Well, yeah, even if somebody sent 2,000, that's
right.
Not consistency. A lot of sellers don't respond until the 5th or 6th, 7th postcard, So, yeah, I could go on and on about consistency because this is what I was doing. I was doing a lot of marketing. I'd get a lot of leads, and I'd get overwhelmed, and I'd work those leads, and I'd get them under contract, and I'd flip them. And I had a full-time job. And then I would stop my marketing because I was so overwhelmed with these leads that were coming in. And then I'd turn around, and I make some money. I'm all excited, but my pipeline is completely empty. There's nothing in. There's no new leads coming in because I haven't done any marketing in a month. And then I'm freaking out, and I start marketing again. It's not just like a light switch that automatically turns on and leads start pouring in again. So I was going through these really vicious up and down cycles where I would do a deal, make a lot of money, and then I wouldn't do a deal for a couple months, and then I'd do another deal, make some money, and wouldn't do a deal for another month or 3. And that just got really frustrating. And I heard somebody talk about if you don't get somebody else to do the marketing for you, it's just not going to get done. And I started developing systems. This guy also said, you need to get marketing done for you in spite of you. And I was kept on getting in the way of myself, and I knew that I had to get the direct mail, somebody to do the direct mail for me every single week, or I just wasn't going to do it. And I was also doing other types of marketing, but so I hired an assistant, a virtual assistant from Indiana, to do my direct mail for me. And she was also doing some Craigslist marketing for me, too. I was contacting landlords on Craigslist, asking them if they wanted to sell their house.
Yeah, so can you explain what the process of that was? Like, how did you plan out, how to find that person? How did you find the person? How did you talk about compensation? Would you mind sharing that whole process?
I think, I read the book, The 4-Hour Work Week, and that was awesome. And I also had Chris Chico's course on virtual wholesaling, if you remember that from 2008, 2009. Mm-hmm. Chris and I are now really good friends, and I owe a lot of a debt of gratitude to Chris. He's just a great guy. But I learned a ton from him about postcards and virtual assistants. And I remember at the time when Chris came out with his virtual wholesaling course, everybody was mocking it. There were some forums that were really big at the time, before Bigger Pockets was around. And I remember people on there just ridiculing him and saying, there's no way you can flip deals without seeing it in other markets with just postcards. That can't be done. And they were criticizing these evil gurus that were teaching this trash. And so, but I believed the guy. I was like, you know what? I like him. I can believe it. And sometimes that's to a fault. I believe everybody. But I think it's also helped me a lot, because it's hard. Nobody can tell me I can't do it.
Right.
If I see somebody do it, then I know I can do it. If that idiot or schmuck can do it, I can do it. Right.
Right. And that's the right mindset. It's
I think it served me well at times. It's also got me in trouble. But anyway, so I started sending out these postcards consistently, and I didn't like them, Danny. I mean, they were ugly. They weren't professional. They were just yellow with old typewriter style font. And I said, I tried changing it, tried to make it look better, but nothing ever worked as good as those.
Well, I think people are still using those. I still receive those myself all the time.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, there's more competition now than there was, I think, in 2009. But there's still, don't forget, there was a ton of competition back then. Yeah, right. And people always think that, this is the bad time to get into the market, or this, it's too competitive. But it's always been too competitive. And it was way competitive. It was competitive back then. But anyway, yeah, those postcards still work. I think you need to mix them up. You need to test new things. I mean, I've been hearing people having good success with professional typed letters that, like a professional letter with a logo on the top and an actual picture of your family on the letter. I've heard that works really good. Some guys are doing well with that. But it's consistency that's the key. Always making sure that you're doing as much direct mail as possible, reinvesting your profits in your deals back into direct mail. If you have the attitude of, well, I'm just going to send a couple thousand letters and see if it works, just forget it. Save your money and do something else. You've got to be committed to it for the long haul. You need to be at a place, if you want to do a lot of deals, if you want to make 10, 20 grand a month wholesaling, you need to be spending, you need to be sending a couple thousand postcards a week or letters. It needs to be that kind of a long-term commitment for at least 3 months before you decide whether this is for you or not. Right. Now, I know some people don't have the money for that, but to do as much as you can, reinvest 100% of your profits back into direct mail, do a few more deals, reinvest 100% of those profits back into direct mail, and just watch your business explode when you do that. Go ahead, Danny.
Yeah, and it's the whole investment thing. It's like, it's not. It feels in the beginning like you're throwing money into a pit. Just burning money. But honestly, if you do one wholesale deal that makes you $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, I mean, how much more direct mail can you do? And it's really just, it only takes one phone call. Good lead from one phone call. You might get 3 cruddy leads. You might and then get the fourth one, have a great deal. That could be the very first call you ever receive. You just never know. But I wanted to go back and talk and finish about the the virtual assistant, and then what we could do is talk about maybe the list that we should target, and then maybe frequency and postcards and letters, and go from there. So let's go back to the virtual assistant though, and how did you find the person? How did you compensate them? How did all that work?
Yeah, so I just read the 4-Hour Work Week, and I heard about the website Odesk, and I've been using it ever since. This was 2009, and I just started. Now it's called Upwork, but I posted a job that I need somebody to do marketing. I'm a real estate investor. I need somebody to help me do marketing, I think is what it was. Just real simple. And I found a lady in Indiana that was had a lot of real estate experience, and she wasn't much more expensive than the Filipino virtual assistant. So I hired her, and she did a lot of online marketing for me. I'm trying to remember at the time if she helped me with postcards or not. I don't remember. I was doing a lot of click to mail at the time, and I don't remember how or who was sending my postcards. That was a long time ago, but I might have found a local company to do it for me. I don't remember, but it was putting somebody else in charge of that so that it just got done. Was my key to success in that. Just whether it's a virtual assistant that does it, or it's a print house or a company that does it. There's a lot of websites out there that do direct mail. There's yellowletters.com, yellowletterhq.com. I think there's yellowlettershop.com. One of my clients just contacted Postcard Mania and got 6,000 postcards for about 41 cents each, including first-class postage, which is a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
And so there's lots of companies that do that now. The point is, whether it's a virtual assistant or not, get somebody to do that for you. And maybe it's a printing company. And obviously the more you order, the cheaper it's going to be. So what you could do is you could order a bunch of them and just have them delivered to your house, and then you mail them once a week or every day or something like that. But you want to spread it out and do it consistently.
All right, and so let's start with lists. As far as what are your favorite lists to market to right now?
I've always liked absentee owners. Maybe it's because most all of my deals have been from absentee owners, and I know it's a competitive list. A lot of people mail to it. But if you look at all of the segments of homeowners, the most likely homeowner to be motivated is a landlord. Just bottom line, they are a tired landlord. They have their fifth eviction. They have too many houses. They're just like me. They were equity rich but cash poor, and they just want to sell and get rid of their house. So for me, absentee owners have always been my favorite list, but it's also really competitive. So now I'm mailing to a lot more high equity owner occupants. And I've learned a lot from a friend of mine. His name is Tom Kroll, about mailing to high equity owner occupants. That's a great list. You can even go into ListSource now and say, I want to send to homeowners who bought. This is the typical list that I send to using ListSource. Homeowners that bought their house at least 10 years ago, that have at least 40% equity in the house, maybe 40 or 50% equity in the house. It's at least a 3-bedroom. I always am very specific on the zip codes that I target. I target the two different areas. I target where there's a high demand from investor buyers. So I look in the last 6 months and where were all of the investor buyers buying properties, and I target those zip codes. And I also target the median price zip codes, the zip codes that are really popular. Like if you go to Trulia and do a search for your county heat map, like St. Louis County heat map, you'll see from Trulia kind of the areas of your county, whether they're cheap or expensive or median priced. You want to target the median priced areas, and there's also a table below that where you can sort it. You can sort that table by popularity. So Trulia will tell you in your county what are the most sought after areas, when people go online and search, what are the top zip codes they're searching for. And so that's pretty helpful. I like to go after those areas because usually that means there's good school districts, houses are kind of median priced, more affordable, and stuff like that. Well, anyway, so you can say, all right, I want owner occupants that bought over 10 years ago that have at least 40% equity, at least a 3-bedroom in these 10 zip codes, and they have to be over the age of 55.
Yeah, I was going to ask the age.
Yeah, and so I don't know how accurate that is, but I do know that it still gives me plenty of people to mail. So it gives me more people than I would mail in a typical 3-month cycle anyway. So
yeah, for somebody that's sort of starting out and maybe doesn't have a huge budget, I think a question that's commonly asked is how many should I mail? And if you want to be consistent, obviously it couldn't be a huge list. Do you have sort of an idea of a good amount to shoot for one of those first mailings?
Yeah, that's a toughie because, man, it's like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? Like, you can't do deals without money for marketing, and you can't pay for marketing without having deals to come in. So, it's really hard to coach somebody who doesn't have much money to spend on marketing. Now, what I do coach people to do is like, listen, if you don't have money for direct mail, you need to pull up your bootstraps and hustle. And there's other things you can do. You can network with realtors, make a ton of offers on the MLS. You can knock on doors, put flyers out there, just cold call Craigslist ads, rentals, FSBOs, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of things you can do, bandit signs or whatever. But if you do have a little bit of money, where do you start? Well, that's a really good question. It depends on how much you have. If you had like $500 a month, I would probably do yellow letters, and I would spread them out over. I'd start sending yellow letters every day is what I would probably do. So you could go to your printer, buy those yellow legal pads of paper, and just find a way to print 20, 30 yellow letters a day and mail them. And I would be super hyper-focused. I would look at the best zip codes that have the highest demand for rental properties from landlords, and I would go after like 1 or 2 zip codes. And I would just try to be a big fish in a small pond. I'd find out who all the buyers were in those zip codes and what they were wanting. And I would start sending mail to, I would send mail first to all of the absentee owners in those 2 zip codes. I wouldn't care about dates. I'd just send them all a letter. Like I don't care how far past they bought it. Because there's not going to be a ton of them, right? It's just looking at 2 zip codes. And I would mail all the absentee owners. Then after that, I would mail to all of the high equity owner occupants that were in there. Another really cool list is the no sale date list. And what that means is there's a lot of records. You'd be surprised. Like if you went into ListSource and said, all right, send me a list of all of the homeowners that bought over 10 years ago. Well, first of all, let me say this. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 1/3 of all homeowners own their house free and clear. 33% of all the houses that you see out there are owned free and clear. There's no mortgage on them. It's a crazy, huge number to think about. There's a lot of people that bought their houses before they started tracking the dates that they were bought. So if you were to go to your county and download all of the houses that are in the county records, you would find a surprisingly large number of them that did not have a sale date associated with them. And so if you were to go to ListSource and say, oh, show me all the homes that sold before 1980 or 1990, whatever, these houses would not show up. So the crazy thing is nobody's mailing to them. So I like mailing to the list that nobody else is mailing to, especially if you have a tight budget. So there's a lot of there's some of my favorite, like I call them niche lists to mail to. If you can somehow get a list of all of the homeowners from the county records, and that you can, there's different ways you can do that. You can maybe talk to your title company. You can maybe go to the county records office yourself and ask them how you can get that list, and try to get that data and find out which are the homes that don't have any sale date. because you know those homes were bought a long time ago, and nobody else is sending them mail.
Right, but
I would also go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, like, if you, okay, so you say that nobody's mailing to them because they're not in there, but what if the criteria they use in ListSource isn't have to, if they don't include the sale date and they just target equity or something?
They still don't show up.
Really?
Because it's not like if there's a null value, it's going to show up. It doesn't. If there's no, it's really hard to explain. And I don't always trust the ListSource data that comes back to me. I mean, because these were houses that were bought before they even kept records on this stuff. So there's no, the only thing that the county has on these homes are, the taxes, the mailing address where the tax bill is sent, and the property address, and the square footage and bedrooms and stuff like that. But there's no sale date on there. There's no mortgage recorded at all on there. So I mean, maybe they do show up in the 100% equity list. I've not tested that. That would be an interesting test, wouldn't it? Just pull that list of those houses and see, okay, if I pull a list of 100% equity, do these houses show up in that? Right. And I'm assuming, that might be different in each county.
Yeah, but you do bring up a great point, is that, some trying a different way than most people might get you records that other people don't have. So what you said was also an excellent way, because you're probably going to get stuff that most people doing these searches through ListSource aren't going to get. And we've had, where we've done huge mailings and we get calls that might come through our website, and we look and say, okay, well, did that come from this mailing? And because it fit all the same criteria, so it should have been in the mailing, but it wasn't.
Mm-hmm. So here's the crazy thing too. When we've mailed to no sale dates before, we were getting decent calls. It wasn't a huge volume, but every single seller, the lead that we got, that we went to go meet with them and look at the house, we asked them, have you ever received a letter from anybody? No, they've never received any letters. Yeah. And these are all elderly people that have homes that have a lot of deferred maintenance. These are homes that have not been updated in a long time. They've owned them for 30, 40, 50 years. They have a lot of deferred maintenance. And so you can get some pretty fantastic deals sometimes from those lists. But there's another great list that I like to target. The absentee owners that aren't absentee owners yet. Okay. This is like a secret ninja thing that I've been just recently playing with and been blown away with. Think about it. The best motivated seller is the one that has a vacant house, right? And they tried to sell it at one time, but they couldn't. Or for whatever reason, they didn't want to. And now they're renting it out. So here's the amazing thing. If you were to go to Zillow right now and look at all of the houses that are listed for rent in Zillow, in the nicer areas, I'm talking like median home price and above. In St. Louis, median home price is maybe $125,000, $150,000. So I'm looking at that price range and above. And you were to go look at all of the houses that were listed for rent in Zillow or Realtor.com, you're going to find that probably 85-90% of them are not in the absentee owners lists on the county records yet. Because these were houses that the sellers had been trying to sell but couldn't. They decided, I'm just going to rent it out. And I've done this where I've looked at all of these homes that come up in Zillow, and I go look in the county records, and the mailing address is the same as the property address. Okay, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So if you were to pull a list of absentee owners in that zip code, these houses would not show up. Because for whatever reason, the owner has moved out, they're vacant, and they've not updated the county records with their tax mailing address yet. So these guys are not getting any mail. I love to send mail to houses that are listed on Zillow and Craigslist for rent. Because a lot of those homes, I don't know what it is, the percentage exactly, but a lot of those homes they're not getting mail from other investors because they're not showing up as absentee owners. There's another list that I like to mail to. It's the eviction list. So if your court system in your county or city puts their court filings and records online, which most states, most counties do, you can go in and see who were going through all the evictions, and you can go and see who the plaintiffs and the defendants are in most of these court cases. And a lot of times the defendant, who's the tenant being sued, their property address is their address is the address of the property. And you also have the plaintiff's address, which is the address of the owner bringing the lawsuit, right? So I like to send mail to evictions, properties that are currently going through an eviction process. You can go to code violations. I know there's some parts of the country where you can get that online. Who are the houses out there that are having code violations? And most counties you're going to have to go get that in person. And there's also garage sales and estate sales. So I've done this before, and it's worked really well for us. Where you can go to like estatesales.net, I think is what it is, and you can see all of the houses that have estate sales. And a lot of times those are houses that, they don't move all of the stuff out of the house to a warehouse to sell it, right? They sell it at the house. And so those are usually houses of deceased people that have died, and the family's just selling the estate. And so you can send letters to those homes. Hey, I want to buy your house. And garage sales as well, a lot of times people are moving, or maybe it's a tenant that's moving out of the house and they're doing a garage sale. Or it could just be sometimes, people do garage sales because they're having some financial difficulties and they need to make some extra money. Not everybody, obviously, but that's a good place to start to get a smaller niche list. It's got to be, what I'm talking about is like thinking outside of the box. How can I find the homeowners that are maybe more likely to sell that not everybody is hitting? And when you're just getting started out, you mail to those beginning lists, those smaller niche lists. And as you grow, you reinvest your money, your profits back into marketing. And then you start just growing and growing your direct mail business. And then pretty soon it just doesn't matter. I mean, I have friends, and I'm not at this level because I don't want a business this big, but I have friends that are literally sending 30 to 50,000 postcards a week, and they're not pulling any lists. They're just mailing everybody. They're just like blanket mailing everybody in their target areas, and that's where if you want a big wholesaling business, that's where you want to be.
Right.
You're just mailing them all.
Yeah, what I like about the niche ones too that you mentioned was, the fact that there's going to be less competition, number one. Number two is that a lot of times with direct mail, the reason why multiple touches work is because, the people it's got to be the right time for them to want to sell. And if you're hitting them spaced out over time, you're more likely to hit them when that is finally, they've decided that, or something's happened and all of a sudden they're open to it. And so if you look at those things that he was talking about, or that you were talking about, Joe, as far as like evictions and things like that, at that time in that landlord's life, it could have been a real messy situation. And they're like, I just want to get rid of this. My wife is saying no more. You're going to end up with a heart attack if you don't get rid of that place, and stuff like that. And they get your postcard, and it's like, wow, this is timely. You know what I mean? So. Oh,
yeah. And, here's none of this will not work. None of this. Yeah, was that right? Is that a double negative? None of this will work if you're not keeping the fundamentals in place. I mean, number one, you need to be mailing these same people every 3 months. If it's a probate, you need to be mailing them every week for the first month or two. But if it's like a regular seller, you need to be mailing them something in the mail every 2 to 3 months. For example, for me, if it's an absentee owners, I'm mailing postcards, just as many as I can. If it's a smaller niche list, I like to send letters because I get a higher response from that. But you got to be consistently doing it. That's number one. And none of this direct mail, you can spend all the money in the world on direct mail, but it's not going to get you any deals if you don't, number one, answer the phone. So many investors, Danny, I think this is a huge problem, say direct mail doesn't work because they make it too difficult to get the sellers to talk to anybody. All right? They make the sellers listen to a really long voicemail. They only call the sellers back if they leave a voicemail, if they sound quote-unquote motivated. And then when they call them back, it takes them 3 days to call the sellers back. They get a voicemail. Maybe they call a couple times and they give up.
That's crazy.
It just blows me away. So if you want to make money in this business, you got to treat it like a business, not like a hobby. And guess what? I don't think many people are going to like this, but you need to answer the phones. Okay? And if you can't answer the phones, okay, just send them to a quick short voicemail or send them to a call center, but call them back within minutes. All right? Even if call them back whether if they're a hang up or they leave you a voicemail or whatever. In fact, it's almost completely irrelevant whether they leave you a voicemail or not. You don't even need to listen to the voicemail. Call every single person back within seconds of them calling you if you can't answer the phones live. That is so important because especially with direct mail becoming more and more competitive, nobody else is doing this, Danny. Nobody.
Yeah, the first person to talk to them has a major advantage. And if you're taking forever to call them back, you're losing out. If somebody else talks to them, they have a huge advantage.
Right. That's why I don't like putting websites on my postcards and direct mail. I don't want them to go to my website. I want them to call me. I want them to. So I have a virtual assistant in the Philippines right now that answers my phones live. She has really good English. And she pre-screens the leads and puts them in Podio. And then we kind of filter them out in Podio, and I have a local wholesaler in my different markets who then calls the seller back immediately. But, look at HomeVestors, for example. If any company in the U.S. understands marketing, it's HomeVestors. They spend millions of dollars a month on marketing, on direct mail, on billboards and TV ads or whatever. And you call any of the successful HomeVestor franchises, you get some of their mail and you call them, somebody answers the phone live. And you know what? It's somebody local in their office that's answering the phones live. And I know the big HomeVestors franchise here in St. Louis that's really successful. They have a couple secretaries that answer the phones live in their office. And those ladies will actually even schedule the appointment for their acquisition guys to go to that seller's house right then and there when they have the seller on the phone.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. And if the seller, I don't know if this is true for everybody, but if the seller can't get the phone to answer it live, it gets redirected to a national call center where a live operator answers the phone and takes the messages. I'm telling you, we're wasting so much money in our marketing by trying to make the sellers jump through a bunch of hoops to go to a website, listen to a voicemail, leave a message, just so that we don't have to waste our precious, valuable time in not talking to an unmotivated seller. But here's the thing. If you want to be successful in this business, you need to be accessible. You need to have people be able to reach you. And just the other day, Danny, I was calling Culligan. I shouldn't mention their name. I was calling a water company. You don't have to delete it because it turned out good in the end. But it was like 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. Their office should be open, and I was calling them to get some help with we need some more salt, right? And guess what? The local office wasn't answering their phone. So it goes to voicemail. Oh, jeez, rolling my eyes. This is just yesterday. I was so mad. I got to leave them a message. Well, I call again, and then it gets transferred to a live operator, but it's not in their office. And that live operator has to know your name, your phone number, the address of the house, the city, the state, the zip. What do you call it? So they're going through this litany of questions. I'm like, oh my gosh. I just want to talk to somebody at the office. And then, so she calls me back, but I wasn't able to answer the phone. So then I call her back, right? So we're playing this phone tag. And I couldn't get a hold of her. And I'm talking to the national company, and it's a different operator each time. And so each time I call, they're asking me these 6-7 questions. And I just wanted to call the lady back. I want to talk to Nicole. And I have a question for her. I need to get this stuff, da-da-da-da. So finally, I finally get to talk to her. And it wasn't her fault. I mean, she was just making a bunch of phone calls. But, it wasn't until I actually talked to a real person that I was able to accomplish something. If I was a customer wanting to sign up for a new service, all right, and I had a list of 5 people to call, I would not be interested in working with the one that sent me to voicemail, that wasn't answering their phones, and took forever to call me back. I would just keep on going down through my list until I found somebody that answered the phones who could help me and schedule an appointment to come to the house and look and see what I needed. So it's just the same in the real estate business. Now, I understand you may have people listening to this may have a full-time job and I can't answer the phones live. Well, okay, you got to do the best you can. Like what I did when I was working my full-time job is I got a friend who wasn't working, who was hungry, and I paid him 100% commission. Listen, here are the calls coming in, and I had him take the calls. And if he couldn't answer them, they'd go to voicemail, and he'd call them back right away. And I paid him 50-50. We split the deals 50-50, and that's how we did our deals. Because I knew the importance of having somebody answer the phones live.
Right.
The other thing I'll say, I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say real quick that, a lot of times, especially for new investors, they see all this marketing and they see all these other investors in town and they think, wow, there's so many people vying for these deals. How's it possible that I'm going to be able to squeeze one out myself? And, it's amazing because I get calls all the time where I pick it up and the person on the phone will say, I've called 6 people. You're the first person to pick up the phone.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, so all that other competition you see out there isn't necessarily real competition if you do those things like Joe's talking about.
Oh, and man, this is a really, really hot topic for me, Danny, because I see so many investors struggle with this. If you want to do deals and you think your market is competitive, you just try to pretend to be a seller sometime. And Google We Buy Houses Fast and just call all of these companies that are advertising, and if you're a landlord and you get postcards, just call those numbers back, go to their websites, and you just wait and see how long it takes for anybody to actually call you back or to answer the phones live. It's embarrassing. Mm-hmm. And so you think you're in a competitive market, and maybe you are, but the problem is this: nobody is doing these things that you should be doing. For example, nobody's answering the phones. Nobody's following up with old leads. We know when that lead comes in, if it's not a motivated seller, it just goes in the trash bin. Nobody's calling those sellers back and following up with them a month later, 2 months later. And nobody is making offers on every lead that comes in. This is a really big topic for me. So you've invested all this money into marketing. Number one, answer the phones. Number two, follow up. Call every single person, whether it was a hang-up or a voicemail. Call every single one of them back as soon as you can. And then everybody that you talk to, this is the way I do it. If it's a cold or a warm lead, I'm going to send them an offer in the mail. All right. And if it's a hot lead, I'm going to go meet them in person or send somebody to meet them in person at the house. But if it's a cold or a warm lead, I'm sending them an offer in the mail. And I'm sending them letters and postcards every single month for the rest of their lives. If you want to do deals, this is something your competition is not doing. They're not making offers on every lead. They're not following up. And you're going to find, I've seen this over and over again in my business and friends, and I do a lot of podcast interviews. The guys that are crushing and are doing a lot of deals, they're doing a ton of follow-up. And you're going to find half of your deals come from the follow-up. And this goes back to the consistency that we're talking about. The reason why consistency is so important is because you're constantly following up with all your old leads. The best list, all the lists that we're talking about, the best list in the world is the follow-up list. Nothing will ever beat that list.
Absolutely. I just spent a week writing up nearly 100-page guide on follow-up and other ways to convert more of leads into deals. Nice. If they don't fit your criteria. But I'm going to put that on the show notes page at FlippingJunkie.com/41 for this episode's show notes page, and include all the links that we've talked about of all these different websites that Joe has shared with us. I think this is the biggest amount of links and info to put on a show notes page that I've had in all of the 40 plus episodes that we've done. So thanks a lot, Joe. That's going to be on FlippingJunkie.com/41.
Nice.
But I wanted to ask, it's not over yet. If you still have some time, I wanted to talk.
For sure.
About, so the question that comes up, you touched on it a little bit, so a bigger list, maybe absentee owners, you do postcards and then letters for more of the niche ones. Let's go a step further, and people talk about yellow letters and handwriting addresses and using live stamps. What is your take on all of those strategy?
Yeah, do it all. I think people spend too much time worrying about what they should send instead of just sending it. So, I'm on the fence. Like, you should test it. If I know guys that are doing really well with typed letters, with the logo, professional looking, put a picture of your family on there or something like that. And I know a lot of guys that are doing yellow letters. Now, maybe you could make the case that yellow letters don't work as good as they used to because now they're just more commonplace. But when you have a handwritten envelope, that will almost always 100% of the time get opened. If it has a real stamp on it. Especially doing little tricks like making the stamp crooked, adding a 1-cent stamp on that. Those little things in handwriting is going to always increase the chances of that letter getting opened. And it's almost more important, I think, than what you're sending them, is getting them at the right time. Because if you get a motivated seller at the right time with the right message, they're going to call you. And it almost doesn't matter what the content of the letter is. And that's why the consistency is so important. You're going to get a seller. And this has happened to me a lot of times when I get a call back from a seller and they'll say, I got your 7th postcard, or I saw your billboard the other day and I just thought, well, okay, and I got your postcard, so I'm just fine. I'm going to give this guy a call. And they think I'm the guy with the postcard with the billboards, yeah. Or I might be the first time I sent them a postcard, but it's the 7th one they've received in a week. Mm-hmm. And like, okay, fine, I'll call this guy to see what he has to say.
Yeah, and you know what that says too is that people aren't branding themselves enough to make it stand out to where they just had no idea that all those weren't from one person. They thought they were all from you. Yeah,
so branding is important. Like I know guys that have, like Sean Terry does the 800 Fair Offer, and he's completely changed all of his marketing now to only be branded marketing. 800 Sell Now or Fair Offer. And I've tried branded marketing before, and I didn't get me all that excited. I didn't think I did any better. But there's a point to that. I mean, Ugly Houses, Homevestors, they do really well with their branded marketing. And they're a name that people, once they recognize it, they'll win most of the time in a head-to-head competition because they're the bigger company. They're more likely to close on a deal. But I think it's important than the type of letter that you're sending out, whether it's typed or yellow handwritten or what. It's the fundamentals that we were talking about before. Being consistently mailing out whatever it is, consistently mailing that out, and answering the phones. Mm-hmm. I think it's so important because, again, your competition's not doing that. And let's say you only get 30 leads from this campaign that you sent out, but that's 30 sellers that you've actually phone tagged. You've actually talked to them. Nobody else is answering the phone, so you're going to have a better chance of getting a deal with a fewer amount of leads when you do these kinds of basic things. Answering the phones and making an offer to every single lead that comes in. In the mail, by the way, I send them an physical mail because I want, and then also in an email if I can, and then I'm following up with them constantly every month.
Yeah, and that's the key. And really, when you think about it, I've heard numbers thrown around here and there from different people, and in my own experience, I know that investors are typically spending between $150 to $350, and I've even heard $450 per lead. And so, if you consider that phone call that you didn't answer or have a way to answer, you're throwing away $350, $400. I mean, it's just crazy. So,
and sometimes you need 20 or 30 leads to do a deal. Mm-hmm. It depends on the market that you're in, but in the Midwest, in my experience, I need to do typically about $750 to $1,250, about $1,000 on average per deal in marketing. Okay,
and that's pretty good. A general, actually.
Okay, if you're in a more competitive market, you might be looking at $2,000 to $3,000 that you have to spend in marketing per deal. And then if you're in like Southern California, I have a friend that's his average profit is like $28,000 on a wholesale deal, but he's spending north of $5,000 in marketing per deal that comes in. So you gotta. It's when you're playing in a competitive market, it's even so much more important that you take those calls in live and answer them live because that's a lot of money to be spending on direct mail, and if you're not doing it right, you're just might as well throw that money away.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have an example or just the gist of what your typical postcards and letters say, and whether there's a difference in what you say in a postcard versus a letter?
You know what? It's funny. I just thought of this. You're Flipping Junkie, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. You have a postcard somewhere on your blog. You've been doing a blog for years and years, right?
Yeah, I think since 2010, I think it was.
Okay. There is a handwritten postcard. I didn't even think of this till just now. That I think it's yours.
Is that with the marker?
Yeah. I was one time. I can't believe it. Okay, I went to Google. I'm at Google right now, and I'm typing in handwritten postcard. Handwritten postcard, and then I went to images, and I was just thumbing through these images, and I saw yours.
Huh, yeah, I'll have to find that and put that on the show notes page as well. Yeah.
And it has, the address is like typed on the top or something, and then it's a marker.
Oh, right.
I'm looking. No, I don't see it. But this was from a blog post like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, I'll find it and put it on there. I remember that. That was, yeah, because the thing that you want to change is to make it specific as the address. So it'd be awesome if you could have the marker font.
Yeah.
Which you could probably do nowadays and add the address in the marker font.
FlippingJunkie.
I'm going to give that a try, I think, actually.
What? Do you remember? I'm thinking it's your website.
Yeah,
so
I remember. I can picture in my head what the one you're talking about looks like. I'll have to find it.
I've been using that for a couple years, and I love it. It's just simply the address is typed on the top or on the side or something like that, and then is a handwritten message that's the same on all the postcards. It's just a handwritten message that says, "Hey, I want to buy your house. If you're interested in selling, call me." And I can't find it on Google anymore.
Yeah, I changed my website up to. There it is. I just found it. I'll include it on the show notes page.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I would like to buy your house, the one at the address above. If you would like to sell, please call me. Yeah.
Phone number, I can pay cash. So the address is typed at the top. And we call that postcard the Flipping Junkie postcard. I didn't realize that until we were just talking. I've used that for a couple years, and my assistant just hand wrote that same exact text, and we put the address on the top like that, and it's worked well.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So, and with the postcards, do you typically do live stamp postcards, or you just typically have them metered through click to mail or something like that?
Yeah, just metered. I mean, we usually do our postcards through click to mail, or we have a local printing company that does it all for us.
Yeah, and we've been doing that lately, is contacting local companies, see if we can get better rates. And, a lot of times you got to sort of use a couple people and add a little bit of work. But if you're doing a big volume, you can typically save quite a bit of money.
Yeah, there's a lot of companies that do it. I like using somebody local because there's been a lot of times when, like, I just want to send a small list, like of a couple hundred, and these guys will do it for me. And they're usually faster. Like if you go to the big national company with a big website, they'll do it, but it's going to be a lot harder for you to say, hey, can you just send this small batch for me? And, they'll charge me the same price that they would if it was big in bulk, a bulk order.
Right.
So and it's somebody that I can call and talk to. It's a lot harder to talk to some of the big national companies.
Yeah, and I've had a problem with drop times. So, if you try to get them to drop to where they're in their people's mailbox, like around Tuesday or Wednesday maybe, and sometimes with a larger national, you don't really know when that's going to happen. So it could show up, on Friday, which might be a pretty bad day to get something like that. So, but that's a good question, though. I mean, when do you try to have yours show up in people's mailboxes?
My assistant, I have not done my own direct mail in probably 3 or 4 years. My assistant just takes care of it. That's a good question. I think we try to get it to hit on a Wednesday, like right in the middle of the week. But at the same time, I don't know if we worry too much about it. It's just like get it sent, get it going, get it out there.
Right.
So it's one of those things that I'd rather just get it done, get it out the door, than spend too much time thinking about it.
And so you, in your letters, another thing I wanted to ask before we start wrapping up here, in your letters, do you favor sort of long form or short form, or what's your take on what the letters typically say?
I'll tell you what my letter says now. It's called, this is what I do in my letter. I'm sorry for being short, but I'm very interested in buying your house at 123 Main Street. Can you please call me? Phone number. Thank you, Joe.
Well, I like that.
So it's not a, like, I don't do the big capital letters buy with dollars. I don't like that. But it's just simple. Hey, I'm very interested in buying your house at 123 Main Street. Can you please call me? Then my phone number. Thanks, Joe.
I like how you started that with the sorry for being short, too, because I think that, I don't know, something about that made me think a little bit more about it. I think there's a little bit of intrigue there where people are sort of curious.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Well, Joe, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up. We've got tons of great info for this episode. I really appreciate everything that you've shared and taken the time to be on the show. Well,
Danny, it's been fun. It's so funny that it's your postcard. I'll send you some brownies in the mail or something like that.
Hey, I love brownies.
Because I've made a ton of money from that postcard. I don't know. Did you make that postcard up? Or?
Yeah, I don't know if I saw something that I sort of got an idea from or something like that. But yeah, I don't know. That's mostly my cell phone number on that card there. I obviously took off the last 4 digits so I didn't have people calling me. But
well, that's good to know, because one of the reasons why I think you've been so successful in your business is you understood the importance of answering the phones, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah. That's good, man.
All right. Well, for people out there listening that want to hear more from you or get in touch with you, how can people find you?
Yeah, my podcast is probably the best way. realestateinvestingmastery.com, realestateinvestingmastery.com, or they can just go to joemccall.com, and I have some stuff there. It's kind of like a blog, but I don't really update it much. It's just my contact information. If you're interested in getting some consulting or coaching, see some of the products I've done. But probably the podcast would be the best, Real Estate Investing Mastery.
Very cool. And I'll include that, a link to there on the show notes page, FlippingJunkie.com/41. So thanks again, Joe, and we'll keep in touch.
Thank you, Danny. Take care, man.
All right, another great episode of the podcast, and Joe shared a lot of great info. Hope you guys got out of it, a lot of information like I did. We talked about quite a few things, so the show notes page is going to be pretty full of stuff here if you want to go back and get some of that. It's going to be at FlippingJunkie.com/41, FlippingJunkie.com/41. You could also just go to FlippingJunkie.com and click on podcast up at the top, and then you'll see this one with Joe McCall, and click and view the show notes page. So I'm going to include a link to his podcast, and then also I'll have a link there where you can download that postcard he was talking about that I'd shared a long time ago. A really cool thing, and I'm actually going to consider reusing that myself just to see if it produces results like it used to. But and then I also talked about that thing that I spent over the last week working on, which is a guide to convert more of your leads into deals, and it's nearly 100 pages. And so I'll share a link, since it's relevant. I'll share a link at the show notes page for you to be able to download that for free as well. I had a lot of fun creating that and added some memes in there to keep it light and fun. So it's a real good read, even though it's about 100 pages. It reads really fast. But I'd like to get your feedback on that too, so if you want to check it out, just go to FlippingJunkie.com/41, and be sure to subscribe and leave a rating and review on iTunes. It would really help out the Flipping Junkie podcast as we get some more people on the show to share their top real estate investor motivated seller marketing tips in the series that we're doing in the podcast. This is stuff that's working now. You've probably heard a lot of stuff that has maybe worked in the past. Sometimes you're getting outdated information. We're going to be covering what's working right now, 2016 and beyond, and really exciting time. I'm looking forward to these coming episodes, and hope that you subscribe and join us to hear all of them. So if you've got any suggestions for who to have on the show, if you've heard some other people maybe do some podcast episodes or blog posts about a certain marketing topic that you'd like to have elaborated on, by all means, go to facebook.com/FlippingJunkie, and that's the Facebook page. You can leave a message on there for me, and I'll get that and see if I can contact them, get them on the show, or just cover it myself if you have a specific topic. So thanks again, everybody. I really appreciate you listening to the show, and see you next time.